So how's everybody doing? Are we good today? Yeah? Because today is a day of celebration, so we want you to have some fun. We want you to get loud. We want you to enjoy it because this event is all about you. So we want to thank you all for coming, first and foremost, of course, because we do have a great afternoon on tap and a lot of reason to celebrate this year. First, to today's winners. You've so earned the right to take home a FOLIO award this year. We saw some of the best work we've seen in recent history, and that's a tremendous step in the right direction because local news is crucial to moving Long Island forward. You should also know we saw a record number of entries this year, hundreds of entries, which means hundreds of judging hours. So what makes the FOLIO Awards so different from other programs is this is what's called a green light ethics program, which is basically this. Let's show the media what they do well and encourage them to do more of it. So what you'll see here today will be some of last year's defining moments, as well as some stories that may surprise, inspire, and enlighten. FOLIO Awards are given in a variety of categories, including areas of particular concern to Long Islanders, to encourage reporting that reflects what you need to know. 3 years ago, we expanded the awards to include social media, so now businesses and nonprofit organizations, as well as media, can enter those categories. So here's how judging works, as everyone always asks. We bring together a variety of community leaders and create judging panels. Each panel of judges sees a variety of news stories. They use scorecards, which give them 5 criteria in which to judge a story. The most important criteria being a story's importance to this community. Each panel reviews a different set of entries, so that's to ensure no one group controls the outcome of these awards. There's no lobbying allowed, and if any judge, for whatever reason, feels it's a conflict of interest to rate a particular story, that judge simply opts out from judging that story. So the scorecards are then tabulated, and a baseline is established. And that's important to know because what that means is, if you're the only entry in a category, you could still lose. You have to hit the standard of excellence that the judges have set. So now the power of this program, and it's unlike any program in the country, is to remind both the media and the public that serving the public, and in particular serving the public need and necessity, is what news is meant to do. So what we celebrate today is not only outstanding work by news and social media outlets, but true community impact. Long Island, because of its geography, has a challenging communication infrastructure, and it impacts everything from marketing to the ability for social change to take place. It even impacts your access to information at the time you need it the most, in times of emergency. And anytime you have a major city, the outlying areas fight the city for news coverage. That outlying area is what we call an underserved media market. And that's our sweet spot. And it's why FMC was started over 30 years ago, and why we recently expanded into northern New Jersey. FMC works to make you part of the news ecology, and our work is more vital than ever for Long Island. You see, technology has dramatically changed how we communicate, the way we communicate, and perhaps most importantly, it's changed the way a message needs to be conveyed. And there are very few people who understand the importance of the right message reaching the right people than our keynoter today, Donny Deutsch. What makes all of this so important to this community is the fact that as the news ecology changes, and it changes constantly, we need to change with it. So now with the major broadcast outlets staking a claim here on Long Island simply doesn't come out of the shadows of New York City. What it means to us socially, economically, politically, is that Long Island is back on the radar screen so people beyond our borders can hear what we have to say. What's also happening right now is we're introducing a new level of news competition inside Long Island. Information is incredibly perishable. So the faster we can get news and information into the hands of the public, the more competitive we can be as a community, and the faster social change can take place. Because of the instrumental role news plays in community development, FMC has advocated for more quality local news for over 30 years. And now it's happening. Soon we'll have more Long Island news, and news that flows freely beyond our borders. This is exactly what we need to jumpstart Long Island's future. Now, somewhere along the way, someone didn't understand either Long Island's infrastructure, or maybe they just didn't understand news. So they came up with the idea that the reason Long Island wasn't getting enough news coverage was because the island didn't matter, that this place simply wasn't good enough for the attention, and that it just couldn't compete with New York City. Well, if you take a look at this stage, what you'll see here is New York. The #1 local news market in the world is here. They're paying attention to you, and they're investing in this community. So the days of being overshadowed or being perceived as second-rate are over. But to make all of this work, the community needs to take advantage of the opportunity, learn how to be heard and what to say, because what's happening right now has never happened here before. So great things are on the horizon and in the very near future. And it's on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Fair Media Council that we're proud of this accomplishment and what it means for Long Island. And we want you to join us and play an active role in what's happening, because things are just really starting to get interesting around here. Just wait and see what the next year brings. So thank you all for your support throughout the year, and thank you for attending FOLIO today. Now I have one more official piece of business to conduct before I get to go sit down, and Maurice and Christine are in charge of the rest of the day. I have the honor of introducing our keynoter. Donny Deutsch is someone with plenty to say. His name and reputation resonates in the world of advertising, where Deutsch Inc. is one of the best-known names in the business. He's since parlayed his success into a best-selling author and sought-after television personality. The Fair Media Council has enjoyed the privilege of hosting Donny several times, and because he's always been a favorite with our audience, we're thrilled to have him back with us today. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Donny Deutsch.
It's really a privilege to be here with FMC and the FOLIO Awards. It's a great organization, and personally, I'm very connected to Long Island. My folks live here. Most of my best friends live here. You can find me on a Friday night at Bryan and Cooper or some of the other great restaurants out here. My oldest friend since first grade, Cindy and John Mangano, my best friends, are here. Obviously, John is his brother-in-law. And before I've settled down, I'm a dad now. I'm a single dad, but with 2 little girls at home and an older daughter. I socialized a lot on Long Island. And interestingly enough, a young woman came up to me before and said, "Oh, you dated a friend of mine about 20 years ago," mentioned her name, and she kind of gave me a look. So just as a disclaimer, if I've dated anybody's daughter, mother, friend, or sister, I apologize. And I'm into a new life now, so we're okay. We're a lot more settled down. But I really love Long Island. There's something special about it, and that's very genuine. What I wanted to talk about today was spend 15, 20 minutes or so, what I call my 15 minutes of not fame, but 15 minutes of kind of random ramblings. You know, I have kind of an interesting seat as somebody who spent about 20 years building an ad agency and studying trends, and then about 4 or 5 years hosting a show on CNBC, The Big Idea, about success, interviewing tons of successful people, and now excuse me, being part of the pop culture and being part of the media, somebody who gets to sit on Morning Joe once a week and do the professionals with my friend Star and Dr. Nancy on a Today Show a few days a week and other things. I kind of have a front row seat to what's going on and the people and the places and politics and media. So I'm just going to share some of my observations about things. The topics I'm going to cover are the media in general, our next president, polls, television, the internet, kids, race, reality television, Facebook, politicians, and Democrats and Republicans. And we're going to cover that. And there's some interesting thoughts. You can agree, disagree. A couple of them sometimes I've said on TV. A few of them are just new things I've come up with. But the first one I want to talk about is what I call the media blame game. I can't tell you the amount of segments I'm asked to do on television or comment on as an image guy based on, okay, anorexia in our society is the media to blame, bullying is the media to blame, men's perceptions of women's, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of always say the same thing. I get very angry about that because as somebody that came from advertising, I always say about advertising, we don't drive society, we hold up a mirror. And when it comes to children's self-image, when it comes to health, when it comes to our perception of beauty, that starts at home with the parents. I'm so tired of the media getting blamed for forming who we are. The media is part of who we are, but I've yet to see, as I've watched a lot of my friends raise kids, the parents that are on it and love them and with structure and discipline, the kids are not watching Jersey Shore and all of a sudden becoming like the situation. And the kids are not watching somebody doing drugs on TV and all of a sudden they're going to start doing drugs TV. They can distinguish between the images in front of them or what they see in magazines or aspirations or fantasies or reality versus what's right and wrong. So, my pat answer when the media gets blamed for our human foibles and the ills of society, it's at home. And there's nothing that can't be controlled at home when it comes to your children that the media can do that is not in your power. So if there are any parents out here, I say that, and this is something I feel strongly about as far as the media getting blamed for things. You were supposed to applaud at that, by the way. Thank you. I mean, this is a media group, right? The second thing I want to talk about is our next president. It's very interesting because obviously ad nauseum, what we've heard for the last 6 months and we're going to hear for the next 6 months is who's going to be our next president. Obviously, we know the two combatants right now. And I tend to like to look at, I like to look at things from up here. You can analyze things to death, but I see it very simple. And this is not my political view. I look at the last 100 years and I say, okay, there have been two incumbents that have lost. And what happened those two times? And it was Bush Sr. and it was Jimmy Carter. And this goes back to FDR, and I'm not sure anything but what happened before FDR. And both times, two things were going on. The economy was going south dramatically, and you had a charismatic new contender, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. And right now, we have neither of those two situations. So Barack Obama, pending anything major in the next 6 months, will be our next president. I can guarantee that. So that's just my thoughts as you hear everything else, because history repeats itself, and you got to look at 10,000 feet up. Obviously, the economy can start to fall apart. But if we're going as we're going, you're going to see 4 more years where the elect him or Obama, and I think he's going to win fairly handsomely in the Electoral College. So I think you can write that down. The third, by the way, I wrote a book called Often Wrong, Never in Doubt. So just for the record, as I talk along here, okay? Which, by the way, and I say this with all my esteemed media colleagues here, is the concept about talking heads on television. All the experts, nobody knows what they're talking about. And it's just the ones who say it and they stick their chin out. And if you really watch what's going on TV, I'm not saying people aren't smart, but it's kind of, anybody could get up there and say these things. Nobody's saying something so prolific. Nobody obviously has the answer. So that's my theory. Next thing, polls. I think polls are bipolar. I think polls are a dating thing. It was very interesting. If you study what happened during the Republican face-off of the last 6 months, the poll you had, obviously, we saw what happened. And you had Trump on top of the polls. You had Herman Cain on top of the polls. You had Bachmann on top of the and all that was viewers wanting the show to go on. I really believe that. When people are filling out polls, it's not as much of who are you going to really vote for president, who do you want to see in the show? And I think that's what happened. I think everybody knew what was going to happen. It was going to end up at Romney, but a lot more fun to have Herman Cain around for a while. A lot more fun, literally, because it's hard to distinguish now between politics and the media. They're one and the same. And I'm not saying that glibly. I think that's reality. So I think you have to be careful. And now all of us on the polls show we're going to be 2 points apart, and that's going to be but in reality, 20% of this country was never voting for Donald Trump. Think about that. Think about the reality of that. Trump was ahead of all these other candidates. And Donald's a friend of mine, but that was never going to happen. There aren't a lot of sane people who are going to go and vote for Donald Trump. So we have to distinguish, and I say that with great love and affection, we have to distinguish between polls and people wanting to watch the show. The internet. I think the internet's here to stay, so I'm going to first start with that very bold statement, okay? It's going to stick. Having said that, though, it's very interesting. I notice a lot of the other things I get called on TV to comment about, going back to, those who can do, those who can't teach, that everything on the internet has a dark underbelly. The internet scares me. Whether it's privacy, whether it's every positive, there's a negative to this thing. Whether it starts businesses, business go under, to, unfortunately, I think 10, 20, hopefully 100 years from now, there'll be the next 1,000 years from now, there'll be the next terrorist thing, and somehow it'll be because people can use the internet differently, whatnot. And I just, as we laud the internet, and whether it's things that happen on Craigslist, the bad things, I mean, we can go everything. There is a flip side, Facebook, and then there's privacy, and so everything has a yin and a yang, and we've just got to be careful with this Wild West right now. It's just, it is so powerful, and it is so democratized in the wonderful sense of the word, that underneath that, there's always a dark side. And if you have a kid that has put the wrong image out there, it's going to stay with them for life, or on and on and on and on. So any positive with the internet, there's a negative, and we've just got to keep our eyes on it. A couple of more thoughts. Facebook. I want to talk about Facebook as a business. It's interesting because there's very, very in the news, and obviously the IPO coming and valued at $104 billion. I would short that, and I'll tell you why. That was really interesting. It's so interesting to be in the moment, not step way, 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 way back. Okay, what made Facebook? What was the differentiator between Facebook? Obviously, you've all seen the movie or studied the case. The difference, there were other ones out there at the time. There were other social media. Zuckerberg was the only one who got, this is about exclusivity. We're going to start a club, okay? And now the club is, $1 billion or whatever it is. So almost by definition, there's going to be a new Facebook. Like all of a sudden, the 11-year-olds are going to find their new thing. Not Google. You're not going to catch up to Google that fast. But I don't know how they're going to put a fence around being an exclusive social club, because they're actually the complete antithesis of that now. So if you go to the very germ of what only made that, but made that the new math in social media, isn't there by definition, axiomatically, mathematical certainty going to be a new version of that? Just a thought. So it's just something that I think about. Two more random thoughts. Politicians of the future. I think one of the reasons, and there's no great insight here, while we have so many ordinary politicians, is because so many of the extraordinary people, like a Mike Bloomberg, have come from the private sector. Very few brilliant, aggressive people come out of college today and say, I'm going to start out in the state assembly. I mean, it's a shame, but it is. So most people who've done exceptional things in their life, probably there's a lot of reasons they can't run for president or mayor. Doesn't mean they wouldn't be great at it. I personally, I think I would love, if I had my druthers, I would love to run for mayor. I can't. I have nothing horrible, but I've just led a life like most people in this room have led, and maybe even then some. So what's happened is we can't understand why we get, wait a second, this is the best we got? These can nobody? Well, here's the great news going into the future. Because today's generation, all the kids are growing up with so much exposure to everybody. Everybody's seen everything. That 20 years from now, when Joe Smith or Judy Smith is running for president, and Judy Smith did this, and there's a picture of Judy Smith going, they're going to go, so what? And I think it's going to allow the extraordinary private sector person to be able to get into the public sector and understand they can get the job, and their life will not be destroyed because they had a 2-on-1 when they were 23 years old, or whatever young people do stupidly when they're not running for president. So, it's a very uptight crowd, Jesus Christ. I could have come up with a lot worse than that. So I think that that's the good news for our politicians going forward. And the final thought is about Democrats and Republicans. And I believe this is the last time we're going to just see it, Democrats and Republicans. I think it's a flawed system. I think we didn't have the right candidate at the right time. I think if Bloomberg was set up differently, it was a different moment in time. I think as we go into the future, there's going to be a third party. There's going to be, people are not going to be locked into it. I think if you start to see what on the Republicans, they're just screwed. Because to get through that primary process, you got to play all the way over here, and we know that doesn't work in a general election. So they're going to have to figure something out. But I believe this is the last time, and this is kind of a bold statement, I certainly could be wrong here, as I often am, I believe this is the last time we're going to see the classic two-party. I think we're heading to something different in the future. So those are 15 different ramblings of somebody who sometimes is right and often is wrong, and it really, really, really has been a pleasure to talk to you guys today. Thank you so much.
Well, that was something different, right? Thanks, Don. No, it wasn't bad. Did you think it was bad? No. Oh, come on, give him a little love. So what we have is the official thank you for being with us today. For your wall, whether it's in your office or your closet, that's up to you. To acknowledge you for keynoting for us today, we want to say the Fair Media Council Board of Directors, members and community, thank you for highlighting our celebration of the best in local news and marking an historic milestone in Long Island's development by being with us here today.